Welcome to 3 and 30, a podcast for moms who want to create more meaning in motherhood. Each 30-minute episode will feature 3 doable takeaways for you to try at home with your family this week. I'm your host, Rachel Nielsen. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to be honest and tell you that I feel vulnerable going into today's conversation. Whereas a few weeks ago, I told you that I feel really confident and empowered when teaching my kids about their bodies and sex, today's topic is one that I do not feel confident addressing. And honestly, that makes me feel a little ashamed because this topic matters so much. And I feel like I should know how to talk to my kids about it. I think it's really common when we realize that we're uneducated in certain areas to just stay quiet about it. Because if we talk about it, we might say something that reveals how uneducated we are, or worse, we might say something that is offensive or hurts someone. So it's easier to just not talk about it at all. But staying quiet and uneducated is not the answer. Answers come from seeking learning and asking for help, which is why I asked Dr. Lucretia Berry to come on the show today. Dr. Berry is the founder of Brownicity, Many Hues, One Humanity, an agency dedicated to advocacy, education, and support for racial healing and anti-racism. She has a PhD in curriculum and instruction and has dedicated her life to developing and teaching anti-racism curriculum to college and high school students, adults through ministry and online, and of course, within her own home as the mother of 3 beautiful daughters. It's an honor for me to be taught by her today and to share this conversation with all of you who are listening. So Dr. Berry, welcome to 3 and 30.
Why, thank you, Rachel. What a beautiful introduction.
Oh,
Thank you
well,
so much.
You've been so kind to talk to me a few times. I actually don't ever really do this, but I had a pre-interview phone call with you because I just wanted to tell you, I feel nervous about this. And you're like, it's okay. This is where we all start.
Yes.
When we feel nervous about it. And I have grown up in a predominantly white community and live in one now. And I want to talk more about race, but I don't know how. And so, like I said in that intro, it's easier to just kind of stay silent, but that's not the answer. So I'm so excited that you're going to teach us, especially because I did survey the audience of 3 and 30, and I found that 97% of the moms who are listening are white mothers. And I want this community to be more diverse and to have a variety of viewpoints and ethnicities and religions. And I want us to know how to interact and talk to one another. And so I just think this is such an important episode. And thank you for coming on and teaching us.
Well, thank you for having me, and you're welcome. And I love that you are starting and even admitting that you are uncomfortable, but you are doing it anyway. And
Yes.
That's brave. So thank you.
And I do want to say as we head into the interview, and let's just start in with your first takeaway.
Okay, well, my first takeaway for moms and parents is to reject the colorblind approach as a solution or as an idea to talk to your children about skin tone and race. And I do distinguish, not everyone distinguishes and uses the 2 words that I do. I say skin tone and race because they are different. Let me explain that I am in a multi-ethnic family. So I am African American or Black, and my husband is a white American. So he's in the white racial category, and he is probably mostly Italian and then some German and Scottish and Native American. So just think about in our family, we are actually 5 different skin tones. So that's why I make a distinction between the word skin tones and then racial categories. And so, for example, we're one family, but my husband would probably remain, and in the white racial category is how he'd be categorized. I would remain or be categorized in the Black racial category. And then my daughters, well, it just depends on, if they're what they look like and how they would be categorized. That's why we distinguish between skin tone and racial category, because they're very different. And being a family of multiple hues, early on, talking about our looks and what we look like involves a creative vocabulary, and children see color just as we do. So again, I'm using my family as an example. Our children definitely see that their father, just as they can probably see that he is a man, and they'll see that I am a woman. They get the words for that later in life, but they see that we're different, but they also see that we look different. And
Mm.
so we need words for that, that also help them understand that though, daddy is a different skin tone than mommy, we are this one family. So children need this language to be able to describe, what they are seeing. And
Mm.
so, what the colorblind approach does, even though it sounds good in theory, oh, everybody's equal, we're all the same. It sounds good in theory, but it it actually isn't true. I mean, yes, we are all valuable people, but in honest earnestness, the world, or even let's just stick with the United States and our history of our country, we won't be treated the same, or different values are placed on us differently based on how we look. And so that is so for, your sex. So whether you're a man or a woman, so we're, still wanting to be equal there, but we're not there. And
Mm.
so that goes the same for how we look. So everyone is equal, and I'm using air quotes. So,
Mhm.
so
Like
everyone is equal.
inherently, like to
Yeah,
God, everyone is equal, but that's not the way that.
everyone is valuable. So everyone is
Yes.
valuable, but that's not the way we are treated in the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that can be where we want to go, right? But color blindness is not how we get there, because color blindness actually robs us of language
Mm.
and a framework and permission or power to get us there. Color blindness kind of shuts us down, saying, well, I don't see that you look different than I do, and I don't see that you may have to walk through the world differently than I do. So color blindness is kind of a silencing thing, shuts things down.
Yeah.
And
And
often
I've heard someone say
Mhm.
the term color silence
Mhm.
is similar to color blindness, of
Right.
just not, I
Mhm.
don't see color, I don't talk about color,
Mhm.
but really you can't address what you can't see. And so you can't address these inequalities in our world if
Right.
you're refusing
Right.
to even see that they
Right.
exist.
And yes, and typically when people are saying it, what they're saying is, I'm not racist. So when
Mm.
they say, I'm colorblind, I don't see color. And what they're really trying to communicate is, I'm not racist and I love everyone. And that's great. Like, I'm not racist either. And
Hmm.
I love most people. I still got to work on loving everybody. I'm being honest. But we still have systems of inequality in place
Yes.
that we have the power to dismantle if only we allow ourselves to
Mm.
function in the fullness of our power to dismantle it. So if we just shut down an education, and we shut down hearing people's stories, or we shut down the truth by saying, well, I'm colorblind, I don't see color. So then what we do is we relinquish our power, right? To make it
Mm.
better. We relinquish our power to engage in the truth and construct and create the world that we actually want and know is
Yes.
possible. So yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So if we're not going to be colorblind, what should we do? How do we talk to our children about race and color?
Oh, let me tell you, that leads us to takeaway number 2. Talking to children about it is so easy. And
Mm.
adults get so nervous, which I totally understand that, because the race and racism is a construct that has been weaponized.
Mm.
And so then a part of it, of weaponizing it, is for us to be in the dark about it. And you don't get this education in school about race and racism, but as a person who teaches adults and children and engages in these conversations, children are so easy and fun. And so what you want to do, takeaway number 2, is normalize conversations about skin tone and race with your children, so that they can be consciously, fluently, and they can confidently navigate our hyper-racialized society. So
Mm.
we it's just like, you want to prepare, if you have daughters, you want to prepare them to be able to navigate spaces where that could be mostly male dominated. I'm not sure. Or, we don't want our children to go into any space, or, we don't want them to go someplace and feel ill-equipped and inadequate. And oftentimes when I'm, for example, talking to my high school students who are in the white racial category, they express frustration at not having had these conversations and had this
Mm.
education early on in life. And
Yeah.
and children are perfectly capable. They're so easy because they haven't been taught to feel shame or guilt yet about it. They don't have the insecurity and about it, and they are brave. They're brave and they're curious. And so when we would sit down and talk to our children, we just basically started with the hues of brown, which is where the term brownicity comes from.
Hmm.
We would start with hues of brown. My daughter said, "Daddy is light brown. Mommy, you're dark brown, and I'm medium brown." So that's how we would describe people: brown like mommy, brown like daddy, brown like you,
Hmm.
or somewhere. And so that's where brown, and then icity comes from ethnicity, and ethnicity means that which we have in common. And we as humans, we are all hues of brown because melanin is brown. So we're all hues of
Hmm.
brown. And that's where our tagline comes from. We're many hues, but one humanity. We're a human family. So again, it's easy to start there with children. There's some books we use that I love, because they do the work for you, like All the Colors We Are, that
Hmm.
basically explains why our skin is different, and it explains the biological, environmental reason. And it's a kid's book, so adults can just read it for themselves. Oh, okay, it's that simple. And then you
Yeah.
read it to your child, and it even has guided conversations or guided prompts, prompt guides, so that you can have more conversations with your children. I love The
Mm.
Colors of Us. That's another good one. Again, these children's books that allow you to have a normal conversation with your child. And then, yes, what happens is they have language, and then they have these conversations with you in public in front of people. And
Yeah.
that's always an adventure, like,
Yes. Yes.
"Mommy, she has more melanin than you." And "Oh, yes, she does. It's so beautiful." So,
Yeah.
so
No, that's so great. And I have to tell you, I looked at your website to prepare for this interview, and I saw your children's books recommendations, and
mhm.
I wrote them all down,
Oh, great.
and I went to the library,
Oh,
and
great.
there was not
Oh,
one of
mm.
those books was in our community library,
Okay, get them in there.
which that
Yeah.
exactly. So I ordered
Yeah.
them all. I
Mm,
ordered every single one.
yes. I'm gonna go ask some more.
And I'm gonna read them to my children,
Right.
and we're gonna choose a few that we're gonna keep, and then
Mhm,
maybe we'll keep them all. I don't know,
mhm.
but then we're gonna give the rest to that library, or we're gonna order
Oh,
extra copies
wonderful.
for that library, because
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that not one of the
Mhm,
recommended books, and they're not like really obscure. These are pretty,
mhm.
famous books about,
Right.
and they weren't in my library, which. So, we're starting on this path in my home,
Thank
and I
you.
love just the simple
Yes.
explanation of melanin
Yes.
is and that honestly that's a new revelation to me, to be able
Mhm,
to explain it that way, which
mhm,
might sound ridiculous, but
mm,
um, because when a child asks, why is
mhm,
her skin a different color?
mhm, mhm.
I didn't have the like biological understanding to explain that until
Right.
I recently, again, preparing for
Mhm,
this interview, listened
mhm.
to a podcast, which I'm going to link, called First Name Basis. And she
Mm,
talked about just explain melanin. I'm like,
mhm.
oh, there you go. Like,
Yep.
you have less and she has
Mhm.
more
Right.
melanin.
Mhm,
Um, what
mhm,
do you think about? So you're saying to normalize these
mhm,
conversations. So how would you approach it if my child said
mhm,
something to me
mhm.
that indicated some like implicit or some bias in
Right.
within them, and
Mhm.
there's part of you that's horrified and wants to shut it down, but then that's not going to normalize conversation. So how do
Right.
you not shame them if they say something like, oh, that's ugly, or
Mhm.
that's how what do you
Yeah.
do with that as a mother?
Okay, so always ask questions. Ask questions. Why do you think that? Where, could you tell me more about that? because, what is happening is that, yes, children are observing the differences from as early as 3 or 6 months old. And
Mm-hmm.
then by the time they're like 5, 6, or 7, they have observed some things in society, right? And they've seen that, okay, maybe all their television shows that they're watching, or the people they see at church or at school, the leaders, the teachers, the people in the White House, they're seeing that, okay, these people maybe are all look like me, and they're all white, and maybe they rarely see people of color, or maybe when they do see people of color, they are not in positions of power. Children have observed it all, and they're trying to make sense of it. And so if you're not having like open conversations in your home, and you're silencing them, saying, shh, we don't talk about that, then they just trying to figure it out in their heads, and they're just replicating what they are seeing. So
Mm.
when they say things, all of they're simply repeating or trying to make sense of what they have observed. Well, this must mean that this is dirty. This person is dirty, or this person, this brown come off, that type of thing. So you allow the conversation to unfold, continue to ask questions, and then, yes, as a parent, the more you know about skin tone,
Mm-hmm.
like melanin, and ancestral and environmental origins, like how where if your ancestors were closer to the equator, you have more melanin. If your ancestors were further away from the equator, you have lighter melanin. But the more you understand that, and then the more you understand how racial categories were created,
Mm.
and how that functions, how that has functioned in our society, then you can explain that to a 4-year old or a 5-year old in terms of what they need. Because what you don't have to do is unload everything in that one sitting. You can just maybe
Mm-hmm.
ask some questions, and it could be so simple, like, well, I thought that because my skin looks like this, and I'm good, and all children think that they're good. So then someone who looks different from me, then they must be bad. So again, if you
Mm-hmm.
ask questions, then you can kind of see where their line of thinking is coming from, or where it's headed, and then you can address that specifically. So
Yeah.
you see, you see
Yes,
what
I do see.
I
Yes.
mean?
And I feel like this
Mhm.
is so similar to so many of the other topics we've talked about on the show,
Right.
where it's just be open to
Mhm.
listening to your kids
That's
and
right.
answering their
That's
questions,
right.
and don't fight against the instinct to shame or
Right.
act shocked, or
Mhm.
for so many different topics.
Mhm.
Just hear them out and say, well, where is this coming from? And
Mhm.
then talk to them
Right.
about what they're observing about the world around them.
Yes. Don't get upset. Just, it's the same as if they're asking about, why are the leaves turning brown and falling off the tree, or whatever. They're just needing some help negotiating these meanings. And
Mm.
so, also, parents, um, like, don't be afraid if you don't have an answer. So maybe you'd say, well, I don't know why that is. Let's explore that together. Because I think a lot of
Mm.
times parents and teachers feel like they have to know like the answer. And maybe the opportunity that is presenting itself is not asking for the right answer, but it's asking for exploration and journey.
Mm. And it is like what I said in that intro, where I think sometimes it
Mhm.
pricks at us
Mhm.
that I should know the answer to this. It touches on your own insecurity of,
Yes.
I'm uneducated in this area. I
Mhm.
should know. And so, but rather than getting defensive or shutting down or shutting them down,
Mhm.
that's just a little indicator, oh, I need to learn more about that thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I can learn with my child.
Yes.
I don't have to be the authority. I can say, I don't know
Mhm.
why that person's skin is darker. Let's find out.
That's right.
Let's do some research and learn about skin
Mhm.
tone,
That's right.
or whatever the topic may be,
Yes.
which I think leads really well into
Mhm.
your third takeaway.
Yes. And so takeaway number 3 is invest in racism education in order to gain understanding. I think often what has happened with the topic and racism, people leave it to maybe well, I'll just engage in maybe a discussion, or I'll watch this person talk about it one time, or I'll go to this one time event that my church has, or this one time thing that my school has. Because it's so pervasive and prevalent in our society, it touches all of us. I know we've been taught that race and racism only touch people of color, but that's not true. It touches
No.
all of us in these ways that you won't understand until you really learn, have a formal education on the construct. And that's why I'm so passionate about learning, having a learning centered space. And I'm excited that now, in this day and age, so much great content is being created. That has
Mm.
not always been the case. There's great books and classes, podcasts, teachers. And so, just like anything, the whole sowing and reaping principle, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And so I want to encourage people to invest. So, if for example, if you want to be a better photographer and take better pictures of your kids, like you'll pay some, maybe $25 to take a class or do something so that
Mm-hmm.
you get better results. And so you want to find resources, invest in your journey for education, not just
Yes.
listening to opinions and, maybe political persuasive talk and things like that.
Yes.
You want to invest in education. So,
Yes.
yes.
And I love in this takeaway that you point out that education de-weaponizes.
Mm-hmm.
But informal discussions can be very hostile
Oh
at
my
times, or
goodness.
can get. And so that, like, going into informal conversations about race or politics or anything else,
Mm-hmm.
can often lead to you just withdrawing and saying, like, it's too much.
Yes.
I don't like the contention. I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
But like reading a book about something, like
Mm-hmm.
that's not weaponized to
Mm-mm.
just read and learn
Mm-hmm.
and come to conclusions for yourself and see the facts
Mm-hmm.
having to do with
Mm-hmm.
the issues going on in our country.
Right.
And I love the resources that you have put together to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And I want you to tell the listeners a little bit about what you have available if they want to dive in more into this race and anti-racism education.
Right. So I I love what you said, Rachel, about how the contention and the tension and
Mm.
how that, and here I am with, a doctorate in education. I have been doing this work for decades. And
Mm.
I love teaching on it because I love using education to liberate people from their fear. And even I know that I am not suited for like the informal discussions. Like sometimes when people want to do that I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not
Mm.
that person because I'm not built for that. I'm more of a, let's just sit down and learn together and, then,
Yeah.
and grow
And
together.
you're not saying don't have
Mm-mm,
conversations
that's not what I'm
about
saying.
race.
No.
No, because that's very important. And in
Mhm.
fact, many of your resources, you've written a book, which I have here right in front of me.
Right.
It is essentially a discussion guide. It's a
Mhm.
way to have discussions
Mhm.
with a group of people that are similarly interested in
Mhm.
growing
Right.
and learning.
Mhm.
So that's more of a formal discussion. It's very
Right.
important to have
Yeah.
discussions, but
But
with
it's
education behind
it's
it
important
and
to
with
have
a community.
informed discussions. So you want to have informed discussions, not
Mhm.
uninformed opinions debating. That's what you don't
Right.
want to do. That's what's not helpful. But yes, informed dialogue pointing towards a goal, a healthy goal is what you want. So that's the difference. So a lot of people have been traumatized by the uninformed debates that often sometimes accompany this topic and conversation. But what we want to shift to is educated, informed dialogue with the goal of creating something better. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Oh,
And you have done that. You've
yes,
created
created.
resources for people to do that.
Yes.
So tell us about those.
Right. So I have created a curriculum. It's called What Lies Between Us, with the play on the word lies. And it's, this beginner foundational type of class. And you can just get What Lies Between Us, journal and guide. You can get that at at Amazon, or if you can go to brownicity.com, that's even easier. How about I send you there? So you can go to brownicity.com, and if you click on learn, the learn link, then that gives you options to either join our membership, which is a learning centered space where we offer classes, um, or you can purchase the What Lies Between Us journal and guide, and then the resources that accompany that guide are part of the membership as well. They're free. So yes, so if you go to
Yeah.
brownicity.com and you click on learn, then that gives you options of how to continue to learn with us. And us is there's a team of us. There's a team that makes up Brownicity, and we are all of us, I think, yes, all of us are parents. We are from different ethnic groups and racial categories, and we're different. We have professors and business people, and like stay-at-home moms, working moms. So we immigrants, a pastor. So it's a group of 12 of solid people who are for you and have this and have grace and passion and want to help you along your journey, your learning journey.
Mm. It sounds like a beautiful environment. And I know when we've talked about it, you said it's like we're inviting you into our table. Like,
yes.
come talk with us about this. We want you here. And so I encourage everyone to go to brownicity.com to learn more about that opportunity and that work. And before we end, Dr. Berry, could you recap your 3 takeaways for us?
Sure. Okay. Takeaway number 1 is reject the colorblind approach as a solution. It doesn't work. Number 2 is to normalize conversations about skin tone and race with children so that they can consciously, fluently, and confidently navigate our hyper-racialized society. And number 3 is invest into an anti-racism education so that you can gain understanding and autonomy.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Something that you said in there, you said that your goal is to liberate people from fear.
Yes.
And when you said that, it resonated with me because I feel like you've done that for me a little bit today, where you've liberated me from some of this fear and awkwardness and shame that I felt that I'm not more educated in this way. We all start somewhere.
Right.
And I have to tell you, just preparing for this interview, I learned so much and felt that even with just the few things that I read and the podcast that I listened to, and that I'm miles ahead of where I was. So it's not a daunting undertaking.
No.
We can do this, and we need to. We need to do it for our children and for the health of our nation and our world. So thank you for this work that you're doing and for coming on 3 in 30.
And thank you for getting on the journey, starting the journey. Thank you. And thank you for having us. Thank you.